Welcome back to Fox 5's On the Hill Live this Sunday morning. You know, President Trump's massive overhaul of the federal government is currently underway. Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, are trying to shut down entire federal agencies, offering buyouts to federal workers across the board. Democrats have been protesting around the district, filing lawsuits in courtrooms and trying to stop the administration from doing these things. Joey Garrison joins us this morning. He's the White House correspondent for USA Today, covering the Trump administration. Jason Miller is the executive editor of the Federal News Network and has been covering the federal government for decades. We thank you both for joining us. Jason, I want to start with you because, you know, the very essence of the Federal News Network is to, give information to federal workers in our region. So what have you been hearing from folks? Because a lot of them, you know, when we reach out to them, are a little shy about talking out about this right now.
The word I'd use is uncertainty right now. There's so much going on, and they're just like going, what's happening? What's this mean for me? Why is this happening? In fact, we have a survey coming out just next week. I'll do a little plug for myself here. And that survey, one of the questions we asked is, what's your morale right now? And morale is way down. And I said, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being rock bottom, 5 being best it's ever been, basically a lot of folks are telling us not good. So I think there's uncertainty and there's fear. And then there's also, well, what's going to happen to me? And I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Joey, when this buyout program was announced, the administration, you know, in some respects was talking about 10% of the workforce, maybe 20% of the workforce. 75,000 actually took this deal. It's only about 3% of the federal workforce. Did they come up short on this?
Yeah, I think they did a little bit. And so that's about 3.3% of the 2.3 million federal workers. Now, of course, what happened the very next day after that buyout offer expired was you started seeing the mass layoffs of probationary workers. These are the most recently hired workers, usually folks who've been there a year or less, getting fired really across the entire federal workforce. And we're still won't know the full scope of these numbers until later this week. But, you know, I think we're going to be talking into the tens of thousands of people who were laid off. And, you know, I don't think this is the end of these moves either. I think it's really, we're here now on step 2, and this is going to, Elon Musk has talked about deleting entire agencies and talked about cuts of 40% in agencies. And I think that could be, you know, what we're going to be seeing here in the weeks ahead.
One thing we know is probably not over are the lawsuits. There have been questions about the legality of all this, and it's a calendar issue as well, too, because the federal government right now is only funded through March 14th. If they get into a situation where Democrats are not so keen to pass a continuing resolution, that could shut down the government and cut off any payments to anybody who took this deal and expected to be paid through the end of September.
So that's a big question that's still hanging out there. If you took the deferred resignation deal, what happens after March 14th if the government would shut down? The Office of Personnel Management, the Trump administration is saying, you will get paid. You're still an employee. You're still on the payroll. So just like any other federal employee who would get back pay during the shutdown, after a shutdown ends, you would still get that. There's a lot of people on Capitol Hill. I heard from Senator Mark Warner recently who said, I don't know if there's funding for this. This is something that's never been done before, and we don't know what happens after March 14th. I think one of the big questions is, for a lot of these, is you're signing this contract, and this contract that you've signed takes away all your rights. And I think a lot of federal employees who took this either A, said, I don't care because I'm going to retire anyways, or B, they didn't really read the contract close enough, and now once you've signed that deal, you cannot come back and quote-unquote sue the government for not completing that deferred resignation deal.
Warner also compared it to a late-night steak knife ad at one point, saying act now at midnight because this offer expires, and it did. Joey, Democrats have been scrambling to come up with a response to all this because this White House has been flooding the zone with news. Is the White House worried at all about these protests that seemingly have been going on every day at agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Office of Personnel Management, the Department of Labor? We've seen them all over D.C.
Yeah, I actually don't think the White House is totally concerned about the backlash at this point. You know, I think Democrats have really struggled to find a way to effectively voice their opposition to this. These protests, you know, aren't going to stop the Trump White House from moving forward. But, you know, I think the backlash could eventually happen where, there's something to be said for good functioning government. And if some of these, workers that they strip out of various departments, if all of a sudden people see that affecting their lives, they're going to hold the Trump White House accountable. And so I think that's long-term where this could get difficult for the White House.
Jason, long-term for the future of the federal workforce, we are always going to have federal workers in some capacity to run the government. What does this do to the next generation of federal workers? Does it diminish it as, a vocation that people would want to enter into public service?
The firing of the probationary employees, which is, it was a blanket at first. They walked it back a little bit to say, well, it should be based on conduct or performance. That's going to take a real chilling effect on the future as well, because people are like, hey, I came in through an internship program. Hey, I'm a 20-something who wants a good career to do something good in the public sector. And wait a minute, all these people just got fired. It's also a supreme waste of money, and I think that's really the other piece that's not being mentioned.